Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome to episode 1 of the currently unnamed podcast with myself, Chawhee, as I sit down with my pilot episode guest, a personal favorite of mine, Lumtheo, the dungeon master from the Twitch TV campaign Quest Vault. And I had a real treat talking to this guy. He is a very intelligent storyteller, and for me personally, it's something I take away from all forms of my entertainment. I enjoy really good narratives and really rich character development in all my video games, my TV shows, my movies, you name it. So for me to be able to probe him on what it takes to write that good narrative and create a strong arc for his Dungeons and Dragons characters, it was real fun for me to talk to him. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can follow updates with the channel and make sure that you stay tuned for future podcast episodes. And as a quick reminder, this is the pilot episode for the podcast, so any sort of technical difficulties or audio qualities that seem subpar, maybe also my podcast etiquette and language could be fine-tuned for future episodes. Just kind of listen with forgiveness, and hope you guys appreciate this conversation as much as I did. So without further ado, Lumtheo from the Twitch TV series Quest Vault. Two and one. Dude, we're live. Welcome, man. Thanks for doing the podcast.
I wasn't expecting it, but okay, cool.
Well, this is the pilot episode. The very first pilot episode. I guess I don't have a name for it yet, so I guess we'll call it the unnamed podcast.
The Racing with Chawhee.
Racing with Chawhee? I mean,
He's the Grand Chawhee.
Oh, okay, but he's more of like a dumb luck kind of racehorse than actual racing.
Hey, you never know.
But yeah, so I thought it would be awesome because we were hanging out for our birthday at dinner, and I thought, man, it'd be super cool if I could just record the conversations we're having because for nonsensical purposes, it's mostly...
we're goofs.
Well, yeah, it's good. It's good bullshit material is what it is.
It's exactly what it is.
But also because you, for everybody that's out there and doesn't know who I'm talking with Lumtheo from Twitch TV/Quest Vault. And you not only are my streaming brother in arms, but a unique streaming brother because you do Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Which I think is pretty cool. It's pretty crazy. But not only are you in Dungeons and Dragons, you are the DM of Dungeons and Dragons.
It's a lot of work.
It's a ton of work.
But it's rewarding. It's definitely rewarding to be the DM.
Oh yeah. Oh, I bet. Well, it's rewarding because you make the results happen.
Well, I get to make the twists and I get to watch my player's reaction. You ever watch a film that you love and then introduce it to like a good friend of yours? And the entire time you like when the new scene's coming up and you're like,
yeah, it's that anticipation of it.
You're like, here comes the best part. Like, I want to see the reaction. That's kind of what being a DM is like.
No way.
You are constantly in that state of, I can't wait to show them this new little bit of thing, and I can't wait to see the reaction to stuff because sometimes they have great reactions to things.
Dude, that's awesome. It's kind of like a dramatic irony, like but the actors don't.
Yeah.
Do you have... So, my first question, actually, since you're the storyteller in this situation, you're essentially like the author of these characters' lives, but it's all improv, and it's all like in-the-moment reactionary. They're reacting. Do you get a god complex at certain points where you're like, oh, baby, I can just throw a meteor at these guys?
Sometimes you're tempted. You are very tempted.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's actually kind of a running joke. It's actually a very, very common running joke. Just between the players and their GM. Just because at any time you literally could throw at them an unwinnable scenario.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's bad form to do that, obviously, because you want your players to have fun. The whole point of being a GM is to be the person who is able to present a good and entertaining time for your players.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes your players do something that really kind of itches you the wrong way, if you know what I mean.
Oh, hell yeah. And then you're like, boom, acid rain.
Well, the actual code is rocks fall, everybody dies.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, crushing damage is a lot. There's a lot of crushing.
Oh, my God.
That could happen at any time. Doesn't matter where you are. You're in the middle of the plains, well, the floor, rocks fall. Everybody does.
What's the closest you've ever come to doing anything like that?
Oh gosh.
Okay, maybe not name any specifics.
well-
but what's the most annoying like characteristic a player could have that's like, I need to do something?
Well, no specifics, but I definitely have had players that I don't mesh well with, and it's nothing wrong with how they play. Like everybody plays.
Well, it's a role play. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. Everybody plays differently, and it's really up to you as the GM to talk to your players and kind of figure out what type of game do you want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely rather enjoy a more serious kind of game where the plot actually has relevance to what the players are doing. Players have consequences if they start doing like terrible things to people. Obviously, terrible things are going to come back. You know.
Sure.
I want to make sure that if they fail a quest, that they feel that failure. That like if they succeed a quest, that they feel the success, that they actually get.
There's like
get
development.
That there's development on the character side as well as just the world itself. And then there are players who don't. They don't enjoy that. They very much enjoy sitting down at the table and just kind of being there. They want to kind of joke and laugh and have a good time, and that's not wrong. It's just a different style of play. And I've definitely had my fair share of players who have made silly or very, in my opinion, very
rash
decisions, or just incoherent decisions.
All
Really.
right, punch the priest in the face. You're in the cathedral.
It was I do have a story. I do have a story of one game that I played. I was only about 3 years into being a GM, so I was still relatively new at running games, and I had run a few previously that had gone for about 6 to 8 months or so, and this is like my third year in, and I get this new group of players that come in. I never played with them at all before, but I just kind of knew them through work and other things, and I came in. I had the whole story like kind of set up, and it was supposed to be like an investigation. Like they were supposed to try and find out like who murdered this guy and whatnot. And one of the players, I'm not entirely sure how he came up with this train of thought, but he had his character take a rope and just take this rope and tie it to the side of a building, and then go across the street.
Like on a pillar or something?
Like a pillar, or like a lamppost, and basically take it across the street and then tie it to the other side. And the first random NPC who happened to be walking by that failed to notice the rope and tripped on it, he hog-tied the guy, took him to the guards, and claimed that he was the murderer. Without like any kind of evidence whatsoever. So the guards are like, "What are you, a madman?"
Did he have hella high like persuasion or?
No.
How could he convince the guards?
He didn't convince the guards. He failed.
Oh, okay.
To try to convince the guards. But I don't know why he went through that trouble. Because the rest of the party was like, "All right, well, here's the investigation. Let's go off and go investigate." And he just didn't seem to understand, like, that's the adventure,
He just wanted to kick some shit around.
Yeah, I guess.
See what happened.
And that's not wrong. It's just a different style of game. I've definitely had players be like, well, let's just go fight some things. Okay. I can just throw monsters at you all you want. That's not the type of game I enjoy, though.
Oh, well, sure. So, well, you take time to, develop the worlds and all the different regions and, oh, my God. If I, so I sit here and I'm like, oh, you know what? I really like storytelling, or at least I really enjoy narratives and things, like narratives in movies and narratives in games. I feel like maybe if I sat down and put some time into making a narrative for a D&D world, I think I could have a good time. So then I get a piece of paper and I, make some basics, and I'm like, okay, well, I need to have different regions and I need to have different climates, and then these cultures. Climates have to have different foods, and these foods have to impact the way people act. Yep. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I tap out.
Yeah, now you know what I deal with every time I start a new game.
Well, dude, how long? What goes into making a huge world? So this one you have now.
So Traukenheim, which is the world I use for the show, which is the world I use for Quest Vault.
Okay.
It took about a year to make. I started it in
a year, your concept to the actual first game.
Almost correct. From first conceiving the concept of what type of game world do I want to have the show in, because I had conceived the idea for Quest Vault for at least 3 years. And I knew that to have that kind of show, I would need to have a very stable fully realized vision of what the world would be like and who's living in it, and for the not only the players but like an audience, because this would be a fully like streamed show, so an audience would have to be able to come in and then recognize some of the more common themes that happen through the game. And so it took a year. I started in February 2018 or so, and really sat down and decided I needed to make this map for the game world.
Oh my god! What came first, the map or like the region or the, like, I guess cultures?
The ideas. Well, the map usually comes first for me, mainly because as I'm drawing the map, I come up with the ideas. Because I do draw my own maps. I have used other people's maps in the past for like home games, but I knew for the show I'd need something that was 100% custom. So I actually took some time and tried to learn how to draw a fantasy map.
Creator of the universe.
Yes, it was a lot harder than you think.
Oh God, I'm beginning to realize how hard it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I drew the map sometime between February 2018 and like July 2018. When I like kind of finished the map, I started putting things onto it and I started writing history. And then most of the rest of it comes when I'm looking for players. Because a lot of how your game plays is based on your players. Like I said, if you want to have a bit more of a goofy game, then you need to make sure you talk to your GM about that. And I obviously wanted to have a bit more of a serious kind of story-driven kind of experience for the players. So I wanted to make sure I had players who wanted that type of game. And if you remember, you actually joined in for a couple of those.
Yeah, one of the one-shots, yeah.
Those pre-games, those one-shots where I was kind of screening players. I mean, like, hey, like, are you going to show up? You know, do you want to be part of the show, but also do you want to have this type of game?
Yeah, for sure. For people that are listening that aren't familiar with the D&D kind of like, I guess, terminology, a one-shot it's like a practice, but it's a practice that's not really tied to the actual campaign. It's kind of like a soft go at what the campaign would be like.
It can be attached to the game as well.
Okay.
Some games start as one-shots. In essence, a one-shot is a test. It allows players to test out
see who
new
fails.
Characters. Yeah, I've had players like come in and they just don't, they don't enjoy that character. That character failed in their eyes because they didn't enjoy them. So, and that's what that's for. The one shot is a good time for you to test a new character, to test a new like play style or class, or test out whether or not this group is right for you. And I would definitely encourage anybody who wants to play D&D to play one shots and to play them often, because not only do you get to see what your other players think of and what do they come up with, but how they improve upon characters that you have made. And one-shots are a great way for that to happen. If you have multiple one-shots in a row, one player might go, hey, John played a rogue last time that I really loved, but I wish he did this instead. So I'm going to play that rogue that was slightly different. And so then now the other players can go, oh, that's an interesting interpretation on how that rogue
it provides a different perspective. You can play 3 different campaigns and you have a wizard in each of those campaigns, but they have different actors behind them. Completely. So you're getting completely different wizards.
Oh yeah, completely. No 2 players are the same. No 2 players are ever the same. They always have completely different play styles.
That's got to make it fresh for you, especially if you're... How many campaigns have you done? A dozen.
More.
Oh, really? Well, how long, how many years have you been... Like, when was the first time you dipped your toes in DMing?
I started playing in 2009.
So 10 years, man. You're a decade in DM. Your medal's in the mail, by the way.
My medal. What is it made out of? Adamantine.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yes, of course. Mithril. I started in 2009.
Oh, man.
My first character was Crom Burloth, who was this paladin cavalier. Rode a battle tiger. Like, it was silly. But the GM was super nice, and he taught me how to play, and it was a good
Was
time.
this somebody you knew in real life, or someone you found through a community online?
No, I knew him. The guy who actually introduced me to the GM and the rest of the group was actually my boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had actually gotten my job, like a part-time job, working at the theater.
Yeah.
And one of my bosses came to me as we were talking about games and RPGs and other things that, that you kind of play. And he said, "Hey, have you ever played D&D?" I said, "No." He's like, "Would you want to?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? I got nothing better going on." And so I ended up meeting with him, and
little did he know.
Little did he know that he started me on this.
He created.
2 years later, he and I were discussing builds on characters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I even spoke to him, I think, about 6 months ago or so, and kind of discussed the show and where it was at, and he was super enthusiastic about it. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So when you create these worlds and you create these scenarios, when we were talking about one-shots, I particularly remember the one-shot that I did, and it was it was a crazy elaborate scenario. There was 3 different alleyways. We had to follow this kind of like royal caravan that was going on to make sure it didn't get jumped. It was this huge elaborate scene. All right. When you're creating these, and that was just for a one-off, mind you. When you're creating these scenes, how many crutches do you prop it up with just in case the party, it just goes over their head?
There's a concept called a fail-safe character, and then there's also a saying that says plans never survive contact with the party.
Yeah.
Which is 100% true. You will never have your plan succeed exactly as you've written it.
Oh, sure, that makes sense. You're not controlling it that much.
Oh, no. Well, you don't have that agency.
Yeah.
The players have that agency. So the best thing you can do is understand your players. And if you understand your players, then the players will
this guy's a jerk off. Let's send him down this alley with all the thieves and robbers.
Exactly.
All right, this guy's a little bit more astute or a little bit more in his books with his character, so let's send him down in, clues area.
Yep, pretty much. But having, like you say, like how you prop up the story with a bunch of crutches, well, that's the fail-safe character. You give them an NPC that is an informant or someone who knows things
that they can go to
if they have questions.
Yeah. Nice. Provide them an intermediary, a messenger.
And if they fail miserably to catch the point,
kill that character and have his dying breath be like, "Check under the lamp, you fools."
Exactly.
His dying breath said, "Check under the lamp."
He's just or he might die or whatever, and as he dies, he falls, his hand falls over, and it's just a paper
like a scroll.
Lamp.
Oh, dude.
It just says lamp, and so then has blood on it, and they'll be like, "No,
okay.
What's under the lamp?" And then they lift up the lamp, and there's the key or whatever.
See, even in distress, you come up with a much more beautiful picture than me. My guy's like, check under the lamp.
Hey, sometimes just a quick sentence can completely change how your players view something. And if you would definitely see that they're struggling to understand what's going on, then throwing out more information is very helpful. But it can also be leading someone from the nose.
Which is, don't want to give them too hard of a carrot to where it's not they don't focus on the race type of thing.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So the smaller quests, you can't let that kind of overtake the bigger picture, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're making these scenarios and this point A, point B, point C throughout, you know the arcs of the scenarios. And then you put people in there, and the people and their importance. Are you ever protective of those people, or I want maybe not protective in terms of harm, but do you put a character out there and see this blooming possibility of what this character can provide for the party, and then they just fall flat because the party doesn't ask the right questions, or maybe this character they don't like the way the character looks, so they avoid him, and you're like, no, this character
has all the information you guys need.
Yeah, you're like, I love this character, and you guys don't get to experience it. It's my baby.
That is all the time.
That
really? Happens all the time. Whenever I create a character, any kind of NPC at all, which is a non-player character for those of you who don't know the lingo on that one, NPC. whenever I create one of these characters, I try to make sure that they have something about them that the players will attach to.
Like attraction, some sort of attraction.
One person in the party should be like attracted to that character in some way. Whether that be just like a facial feature or like some imagery of something that they're wearing, something that they talk about. Like
something they overheard. That's what I immediately went to. It's like something I overheard them say.
He's like, oh, he said something about this. I know about that, like I need to make sure I talk to this character.
Yeah.
And that's usually enough to get people to kind of go talk to these characters. But sometimes it's not, like you said, like, oh man, that guy kind of looks a little shifty. Let's just avoid him completely. And that does happen. But you realize that you can reutilize that character in the future because they've seen them. And they might not have gotten that information from them. They'll need to get it from somewhere else. And that's easy enough. You just gotta determine where else that information might be and then lead them to that instead.
Oh my gosh.
Which can be a daunting task in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like, that character as well can be used later. For example, if someone says, like, oh, we need to figure out where the thieves' den is. And as they're walking around the street, they see a group of kind of thugs or whatever, and they say, we should probably avoid them. But I'm thinking they have a note that leads them directly to the warehouse that they're hiding in.
Oh, God.
So, oh no, where else can this note be, Well, maybe a street urchin runs by and tries to pickpocket them. And so they grab him and they say, like, hey, what are you doing here, kid? And he's just like, oh, I don't know. And then they, like, search him. Oh, he has a note. The note was now magically moved from point A to point B.
Wow. Gracefully, too.
And it's very simple and very easy. And that actually created an NPC. That new boy, that street urchin, the players might attach themselves to him.
He's now a well of information.
He is now a wealth of information.
Yeah. Wealth, rather.
And so they might attach themselves. They might be like, what's your name, kid? What are you doing on the street? Here's some gold. Go find yourself, like, someplace to live. Get off the street. They might try to be nice to this kid. Or they might, like, try to sneakily follow him back. Or you never know. It just depends on what your players, like, how they play their characters and what the characters are. Like, some of them might treat that kid terribly. And some of them might just
beat him up. Give us more information.
Hey, it happens.
Well, I mean, because when I think of almost all narrators, like, it's kind of this, I don't know, it's kind of like a hidden theme with most stories nowadays in movies, books, whatever, where certain characters have like plot armor, right? They're not going to die because they can't die. That they have to maybe not give information. You just showed us a way around that, but they have a purpose. And if the party doesn't see that purpose through, you got to figure a way out to get them to fulfill their purpose. So it's like that for me would be one of the most struggling parts, because I would just be like, now he runs in front of you and says, I have news or something.
Yeah. You can't do that because immediately your players would be like, all right, this guy's important.
We're quickly learning that I could never DM a game.
Well, characters should never have permanent plot armor. Like, they might have the ability to withstand.
George Martin agrees with you.
Yes. Yes. They should never have a permanent plot armor. They might have a temporary one. In the case of if you have a very specific scene. For example, you need a particular wizard to cast a very particular spell at a very particular time in the game, and the players have just met him right now, but he's not supposed to cast that spell until hours later, then he has plot armor in that moment, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But the way that you get around that is by not putting that wizard in danger.
Have you ever been in a scenario where you think he's not in danger, and then I come to...
Well,
I mean, sometimes I browse. So D&D on Twitch isn't the most popular one, but sometimes it makes its way up there, whether influencers are, they've got their once every 6 months campaign they get together to do or what have you. And sometimes I'll see when a DM gets caught off guard by an action that he didn't consider. So how many of those do you have in a normal, maybe not in a normal session, but how many of those would you say you're fault to in a normal campaign? Like all of a sudden, wait, you have that spell? Oh, crap.
Not as often as you think. A lot of that comes down to read your players' character sheets. Know what spells that they have access to.
They can just pull something out of their ass.
Yeah, and that's something that you have to make sure that your players know not to do as well. as like I've actually had players who improvise things that weren't on their character sheet, and I've had to call them on it.
Oh, you're like really?
They would like
you don't have that spell.
For example, I would have characters who are kind of adventurers by nature. They're kind of explorers, and they go off and do these different things. And I've read their character sheets extensively because I want to know that they have this spell and this thing. They don't have any weapons on them. And as they're going through a particular adventure that requires them to go into like a tomb of some sort, all of a sudden one of them produces a shovel. And I'm like, where'd you get the shovel? And I'm like, I
keistered it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, where'd you get the shovel? And they're like, oh, I figured I could just have one. And I'm like, not necessarily, because that shovel changes the way that this dungeon is being run. Because now you can use that shovel to block a door. You can use it to open a tomb. You know,
you can use it for a lot of things. In a dungeon, you could use it for a hell
You can use it for a lot. That is a tool.
Yeah.
And so I've had players that have just kind of produced anomalous items. And I'm like, you can't do that, you know? Like, I like to make sure that I keep track of what you have, so I make sure that you use the resources that you have. You can't just create something. And that's like just me. That's just how I run my games.
Well, you've got a tight ship, it sounds like, because I would forget. I would be like, oh yeah, I guess you do get that in a traveler's pack, and without even looking or something. Like, all right.
Nope, gotta look at your bag.
Yeah.
Tell me what you got.
Jeez.
When someone says like, what do you got to trade? Look at your bag. Like, you gotta sift through all the pages. Like, oh, I got a glass doorknob. They're like, ooh, shiny.
Oh god.
I'll trade you this glass doorknob for this potion of healing.
Yeah, wasn't it risky that we had like a thing of jacks or marbles or something, or steel bearings or something? I can't remember what he had.
Ball bearings. He had steel ball bearings, and he used them beautifully.
He used them like out of a scene of friggin' Home Alone 3 or something.
Exactly what it was. Like, I'm going to cut the back of the tent and usher everybody out, and then I'm going to throw the ball bearings down on the ground in the middle of the tent, so when the orcs come in, they slip and fall.
Yeah, it was, and like, I'm thinking a smash and grab. He kind of like, he got into the orc camp to get something, and then tried to get out.
To save you guys.
Yeah, oh yeah, we were tied up or something in there. Oh, I mean, how did that slip my mind? We were hostages.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, and then to like shake them.
He threw the marbles down and lit the tent on fire.
And then they got, oh yeah.
He was that was brilliant. That is an amazing, brilliant move. Very creative. And that's something that as a GM, I love to reward. I love to reward it when players get creative. One thing that I know, and my players have told me, is that I'm very lenient on spellcasters specifically. Because I like to allow my spellcasters to be more creative than the rules really allow.
So like bend their spells can do a certain limit, but if they needed to do just that little extra to make it like a flashy play,
then I'll let them have it
because it's a flashy play.
Yeah. For example, Acid Splash, a notorious spell. It sounds great. It does a lot of damage for a low level cantrip, and then it also hits an AoE if there's people next to each other in 5 feet. But the wording on the spell specifies that you can't use it on objects, and it disappears afterwards. So you can't make acid jars. You can't put it. You can't cast an acid splash on a lock and melt the lock up the door.
Keep the acid after an acid splash.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You can sell it.
And you put it on knobs, and it can melt off the door, so you can just get in.
You can't do that. The rules of the book, how it's worded, says you can't do that.
Okay.
For me, like in the heat of a battle, if someone throws acid splash at an enemy and they miss, it doesn't just disappear. For me, I'm going to let it hit the back wall and melt through whatever it is that's over there.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? The way the rulebook
is... From a visual perspective, it's beautiful to see it all the way through, as opposed to just, it does nothing.
It disappears, yeah. And the rulebook says specifically that it can't harm objects. Because it can't be targeted on an object. Otherwise, if that's the case, where it could melt something behindward, which was what I do... players could abuse that system, be like, all right, cast acid splash at me and miss and hit the door.
There's 4 of them, throw it on the chandelier, drop the chandelier and hit 4 of them with the chandelier, something like that. Damn. Yeah, crazy innovation. we talked about dungeons, and we talked about maybe someone being innovative enough to use a shovel to stop a door or whatever. How much time do you spend creating a dungeon that you feel is like the American Gladiator, where it has all the stops for all these people? Has any party ever gone into one of your dungeons where you're like, this is going to kick their ass or blow their mind, and it doesn't either?
Yeah. I've definitely designed dungeons that have fallen a little bit
Are there levels of dungeons? Like, could you set forth a dungeon where you're like, this is gonna deter them away because they can't handle it? Or
no, typically if you design something that they aren't supposed to go into yet, you make sure you give them a lot of warning. Like, oh, this isn't something that you should take on yet. And you're like, oh, this is a very dangerous place. A lot of people go in and they never come back. And these people are high-profile knights, like, you guys are level 2.
Hopefully that lands on someone who's got their head on straight and not led by the barbarian. We're like, well, we could take them.
And that happens. And you got to let them die.
Oh, really? Have you ever done a party wipe in a dungeon? What? Oh, dude, walk me through that. Was it a scenario where they wanted to keep their characters, so you killed them and then gave them an alternative to purgatory or whatever? Or?
That was the end of the game.
That was the end of the campaign?
The party didn't want to...
Evil dungeon master. Yeah. They're like, hey, lose my number.
No. They actually rejoined for the next game as well.
Okay, all right.
But I make sure I tell all my players, like, I'm going to let you die. If you go to a place that you are 100% told is death... man. Like, if I warn you 5 or 6 times, like, hey, this place is death. Hey, this place is death. Like, and you still go there.
It's written all over the walls in ancient blood.
Yeah.
People of level 8 cannot survive.
Yeah. But, like, one of the examples I say is, if you poke the dragon, he's going to eat you. He's a dragon. You're level 2. Why are you poking him?
I think we could take him.
Like Smaug, right? Like, just run around. No, fire breath, attack of opportunity. He's dead.
What do they pour on him? Lava or something?
Gold.
Yeah,
molten gold. Which would be hilarious because it would do no damage to a dragon anyway. Resistant to fire.
I'll see. Wouldn't know that.
Oh yeah. They definitely walked into a dungeon with a few too many undead. And I tried to give them outs as well. Like, I try not to, you are just dead. Like, I don't like throwing players into a situation where it's like, oh, you're just bumped.
Here comes something, don't bother rolling type of thing. Or roll, it doesn't matter what you got.
Yeah, no, I don't like doing that. The best thing I'll do is I'll have the creature kind of walk up and, like, be present and let them realize how big he is by having him kill something.
Is it smarter to go with like one creature as the imminent issue, or is it smarter to go with a horde of things? Like, how do parties respond differently to the scenarios?
Depending on the number in the horde, the players might think that they can take it.
So if they see like a mob of 80, but if they see,
they've
got a cave troll.
Depending on the player. I've had players say that the single entity is far less dangerous, and I've had players say that the multiple groups is far less dangerous.
Well, some players are good at their characters to the point to where like a barbarian can swing and hit, like, isn't a swipe radius a thing too, where they can swipe and hit like 2?
No, they can hit one person. If they successfully hit one person, if they have the right feats, they can hit another person and then just keep it going.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of like become a whirling dervish, so to speak.
Oh.
But it just kind of depends on the player, not necessarily their character. I've definitely had players stand up to a mob before, where I was like, "You're gonna die if you walk into this mob of orcs. They're just gonna kill you." And I've definitely had a player walk to his death, just running directly into a mob of orcs for some reason. He thought he could take all 16, 20 of them.
And then you're like, all right, well, you're dead, man. We'll see you later.
Well, no, I let him fight. through. He managed to take down a good number of them, but eventually...
But what happened after? You killed his character, and then what?
At that point, he was just like, damn,
Oh, man.
I tried to give him ways to run. One of the biggest things that a lot of players forget is you can run away. Like, running away it's not a bad thing. It's surviving to come back. And this actually came up in the show recently. The players had come back to the city that they had started with, and it had been overrun with undead. And in the initial kind of attack as they entered the city, they were being overwhelmed by the outrageous number of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a part of me that was wondering whether or not they would think to run away. And as the battle continued, I decided I needed to make sure there was a little bit of an intervention here. Give them an out. Give them the option to survive. At which point an NPC arrived, which was there.
The messenger.
Okay. The messenger, the kid in the street that tries to pickpocket. Large dragonborn comes in, starts taking out a couple of the undead, and is just like, run! Run! And so immediately the players go, okay.
He's like, this isn't where I parked my horse.
Exactly.
Oh my god, run!
Yeah.
You could tell that this guy's 3 times your size, and he's screaming like a little girl.
Yeah. And at this point, they ran away, and then they ran away. One of the players almost died in that running away phase. Roger almost died.
Oh, well, he's dwarf. He's got those little legs.
Yeah. Well, he's not a dwarf, actually. He's human.
Oh, Roger is?
Yeah, Roger's human.
I thought
he was raised by dwarves.
Oh, that's why he's got the
He has the dwarven beard, yeah. He looks like a dwarf.
Well, he also has that accent, too, and it just gives me that dwarf
feel. Oh, yeah. That's the point. That's why he chose it. That's why Casey chose that. He definitely loves that character.
Nice.
But I definitely was like, if he dies, he dies. Like, I'm not gonna save them, but I don't want them to die. Like, I don't try to kill them.
Yeah.
It's not my goal to take out these players.
Even if they just totally piss you off the week before, you're like, all right, you want to play, bitches? Let's play.
No.
Okay, you wake up, you smell smoke. The room's on fire.
Rocks fall, everybody dies.
Yeah, rocks fall, everybody dies.
Yeah. No. It's never should be the DM versus the players. That is a bad strategy, and it's a way. I think
you have a stronger will than I do.
It's a great way to make enemies instead of friends. Actually,
makes sense.
I actually lost a couple of players because of that. Where
really?
Like they've gone off to play in other games and then they've come crying back to me like, ooh, this other DM is the worst, and I'm just like, I'm sorry,
you're too good.
Well, no, more like they
made
made some mistakes. They just they view it as the player versus the DM, and so they go out of their way to make encounters deadly all the time. Like a random attack by goblins can kill 3 players in a party of 5. And I'm like, that's a random attack of goblins, man. Like, they're goblins. It's not an adventuring, it's not a story. Like, the party was just kind of walking down the road and got attacked by goblins, and 3 out of the 5 of them died. You know.
Spontaneous goblin horde just running around?
Apparently. Like, it didn't really have any story relevance, nor did it have any kind of weight to it. That the player characters were just starting on their adventure.
It's just a DM that's just trashy.
Yeah.
No.
that happens. And that's just the way that GM plays his game.
Yeah.
But that's definitely not the way I would see it.
No, it doesn't feel that way. Have you ever thought about so you've done a few different campaigns now. Have you ever done like a sci-fi one? Because I know that's like a D&D option, isn't
Star Wars.
it? Yeah, like
there
a Star Wars.
There is a legit Star Wars.
It's like actually in the Star Wars universe, lightsabers and stuff. Oh,
I own a few figures and a few books of the Star Wars game. They actually came out with a recent re-release, more like an update that you can actually buy in stores now, and it actually is quite fun.
That sounded like a droid, like a plug from a droid. It's in stores now.
In stores now.
Maybe a Kirk plug.
No, that would be something more like, hello, this is the recording, and you can buy this game in stores.
Oh, you better watch out.
Now.
I think we just got a few YouTube subscribers from that. Hey, can I get this guy to do my voicemail? So have you ever done
voicemail? Hello, you've received a call from me.
Oh, God. This guy. Leave this guy a message. So have you ever done one of those campaigns hosted, or have you played in one?
I have played one.
Oh, okay.
I have played one, and I have DM'd one. The one I played in one was really interesting. I played a bounty hunter. Very different.
Mandalorian?
Yes, actually.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
Was it you were like in a guild or something?
No. Just a rogue Mandalorian. The game that I played in was set during the Civil War. The Galactic Civil War. So during
Clone
the age
Wars?
of the Empire and the Rebellion.
Oh, okay.
So this was while Darth Vader was still alive and Skywalker was still on
so
Tatooine.
the Star Wars characters were actually in the... So you played like during the timeline of the movies.
Yep.
My God.
Yep,
That's awesome.
It was great. It was a great story. I enjoyed it up to the point where the game ended. Unfortunately, the game master ran out of time. He, I believe, joined the military and was not able to continue the game.
Oh, damn.
Well,
thank you for your service, whoever it is out there.
I know it is, but
No.
I'd rather not.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Without his permission.
So in the universe, since Darth Vader is like an actual name everybody knows, did you meet any characters everybody knows?
No.
Or like their cousins? Like, oh, that's Ho Solo. It's Han's brother.
Solo. What?
All right. I mean, maybe not Ho Solo. All right. We know Solo comes from a unique background.
All right. No. And there's actually a good reason for that. And I can actually explain that using Lord of the Rings, actually. They also have a Lord of the Rings RPG as well, and I own a book of that as well.
Oh, like you're in Middle Earth?
Like you're in Middle Earth.
Oh, damn.
And you can meet characters like Gandalf
I feel like Middle Earth isn't big enough to do a D&D campaign.
It is a great world, and there's a lot of history in there. I don't know if you've ever read the Silmarillion, which is basically the entire history of
that was like the initial book or something, wasn't it? Before Hobbit? Or
don't know exactly what order they were released in. But it is a very there's a lot of information in it, and there's also like the Atlas of Middle Earth, which I own, and there's just a bunch of cool stuff in history. And I've actually run a game in Lord of the Rings that didn't go well, and I know why as well. With Lord of the Rings, it's definitely an A to B story. Frodo starts in the Shire, and then he goes like from A.
Is that when the timeline was, or because I know you could do the timelines before when there was Civil Wars and Time of Man and all this other stuff.
Anytime you wanted. But it's definitely that A to B story. He starts in the Shire, he ends in Mordor. It's a straight path from A to B.
Yeah.
With very little deviation. A normal D&D game goes A to B to C to D to E, back to A, back to C, and you go around, and then you come back to places quite often, actually, because it's a sprawling adventure.
It's like you're painting a picture as opposed to hitting a start and finish.
Yes. And so when playing a Lord of the Rings game, I realized that the adventure I had originally designed was not Lord of the Rings. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like a Lord of the Rings game. As well as when the players wanted to go speak with a character from the books or a character from the film, it was incredibly daunting for me as the GM to try to play Merry.
God.
They went to go see that, because I had set my game in the fourth era, which is right after like.
So they were in Minas Tirith.
No. This is right after the ring is destroyed, and like the Age of Men, like Aragorn is now king, and this is after the films and after the books are over. And I had a whole story planned out for this point, and they decided they needed to go to the Shire. They were in Bree, and they needed to go to the Shire because they needed to speak with one of the 4 Hobbit heroes, because they had experience with a ring. They found a ring. The players had found a ring, and they needed someone with experience with a ring to figure out what to do with it.
Hey, we kind of found this thing. Is this anything like what you encountered?
Basically, they decided they needed to go speak with
Mary's
Merry.
Like, yeah, he signs his forehead. Yeah, thanks. Do you want a photo?
They decided that they needed to go speak with Merry and Pippin, and that was my problem, because when they arrived, I was like, "How do I play these characters? These are so well
they're not
known,
your characters,
and they're not my characters.
Yeah,
they aren't people that I created.
Yeah,
and so I can't
just know them down to their foundation. Exactly. You have to try to discover them to their core, and that's a little bit tougher from a narrator's perspective, for sure.
And back to the Star Wars reference in that way, I would never want Darth Vader to show up in my game. I would never want the Emperor.
Oh, hell no.
Or any of those characters.
Yoda. Oh, we heard that Yoda's in the house.
Exactly.
Like, what? I'm going to go see Yoda.
Exactly.
Oh, no. I mean, he's super quick.
Exactly. He's super quick and he's leaving.
You can't get out. And then all of a sudden you get shot by a blaster.
Oh no, you're under attack.
You.
He doesn't like you. Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
That would be something that I'd want to introduce, but I know I could never do.
Yeah,
I can never pull it off.
So it's safe to say if you ever do one like a Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, you're going to do it like in maybe a different timeline,
or just not have them be involved.
There's like no
it's
mention
just another adventure that happens during the Galactic Civil War.
But some player's gonna be like, he's at a bar or whatever, and he's like, hey, do you know any Jedi around here or something? And then, well, I guess you could probably just make up a name.
And then some guy could show up and he's a Jedi during the Galactic Civil War.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It doesn't have to be,
all right.
At all. It doesn't have to do anything with the movies or the like the books that are already out there. Yeah. For Star Wars or any of the other kind of properties that you can play RPGs in.
Well, let me ask you this. All right, you hold all the power in the palm of your hand. You have to erase one from the history of mankind. Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Which one do you keep? Which one do you keep? Which one do you axe? I think this is a slam dunk answer for me. It's pragmatic. There's logical rather. There's logic behind the answer, I think.
Well, and that's a difficult one. Personally, I have more of an attachment to Tolkien's work than I have to Lucas. So I would probably go with Lord of the Rings to keep.
And get rid of Star Wars. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're going to lose a lot of nerdy fans, but I honestly think, I totally agree with you. And it's only because I think Lord of the Rings is a little bit more of a uniquer, like the fantasy of Lord of the Rings is not spread too thin, whereas the fantasy of like a sci-fi, like Star Trek was going on at the same time, or at least in the same eras as Star Wars. They're different realms, a little bit more science-based versus fantasy, but I feel like I can get my universe fill through different films and through different works than like my fantasy fill through not having Lord of the Rings.
Well, Lord of the Rings is actually like Tolkien's work was some of the first like fantasy work that spawned a lot of other fantasy work.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like elves that live in woods and are tall and kind of long hair that are very like good with archery. That was a Tolkien thing before anybody else.
Well, dude, the Tolkien estate slapped didn't they slap a restriction on people using the word hobbit because it's like a Tolkien term?
Yep.
Like that's why they're called halflings or whatever in D&D. You can't have a hobbit.
Correct.
Like that's our property, intellectual property or whatever.
Correct. And that was like it started all of D&D and a lot of other stories that are created because of it, Forgotten Realms, all that type of stuff is based a lot of Tolkien's work. Like elves, magic it being the way it is, wizards being the old guy in a cloak, like that's just
it's classic.
That was all spawned from Tolkien, and there are other influences obviously, but like no one had ever kind of mashed them together in this way before, and it worked very well.
Oh hell yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, and so I feel like we'd be losing a lot of that culture if Lord of the Rings was removed from
Dude, life would be weird for sure. Life would be weird. I think if Star Wars disappeared, we probably would lose some of the crazy technologies we have today just because of our fantasy thoughts back in the time before it existed. I feel like a lot of technology came from some of these narratives that were written in movies and whatever.
Yeah. Well, science fiction is really just like a wish list for the future.
It totally is, dude. Yeah.
Like that's all it is. So whenever someone writes some science fiction, it's usually just a wish list for the future. So
essentially our fate is controlled by narrators, and narrators are also DMs. We're in a game. Oh my God. I think I just took the red pill, everybody.
Hey, there are a lot of hilarious comics that are
the Mercury chair.
There are a lot of hilarious comics out there that talk about like, oh yes, so you've come home from your work and your wife has just brought to you a note that says she like saw you out at the bar with another woman. What do you say? I roll for deception.
Oh gosh. Do you ever catch yourself?
It's the dragon sitting at the table, and the DM is there, and he's an orc.
Do you ever catch yourself when you're writing these worlds and stuff? Do you ever catch yourself doing your daily tasks in the terms of like roll perception, roll open car
time.
door? Oh, really?
All the time. And in fact, that's a big joke. It's just like when someone like trips and falls over, and you're just like, oh, well, someone failed their acrobatics.
Oh my God.
And they're just like, I got it. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I can tell you're not good. Your deception's not very high.
Dude, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Happens all the time.
Narrators rule the world, man. Did you ever see Westworld?
No, actually.
Dude, you should watch Westworld. Okay, so it's kind of a tangent thought here, but Westworld, you know about it, don't you?
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like this place that humans can go in the future, and there's all kinds of NPCs. It's like Red Dead Redemption 2 if you could, go on vacation there. And you could do anything you want. You couldn't die, but you could kill NPCs, and you could go on. There's an old guy that's like, let's go panning for gold. And you're like, okay, it's going to take 3 days. I'm going to go in the woods with this old guy. And it's like he looks like a human and feels like a human, but it's a robot, essentially. And you can shoot him, or bandits will come across to you. And so there's all kinds of these stories that are going on. Yeah, it's like a game narration. Well, anyways, one of the characters in Westworld is the narrator, and so he like knows and writes all of these quests and stories that the actors actually go on, and he like plays a big part as the story develops. But it was pretty. I thought about you when I watched it. I was like, if Lumtheo could be in any sort of like beta of this, he totally should be, because that would be awesome, dude. Not only would it be in like the humans are their own character, like they're themselves. There's no characters, they're not assuming like a shorter person or like, act storing skills. They're going as their regular, like mushy human person. Like, and so I feel like that experience alone would be fun to write for, because you're essentially taking these characters who have no business being in this world, and they're in this world.
Oh yeah. That's also something that you can do actually with the game as well, is just be yourself. When you make a character, just try to make them as close approximation as you can to you. God.
Or like an ambiguous you, where it's like you're a little bit shy, but your character just can't talk to anybody. It's like shakes, he nods a lot when he's having a conversation.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, shy characters are interesting, but they grow weary very quickly, especially for the player playing them.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
But what about from the perspective of like the DMing a shy character? You know that they're not going to take a lot of baits you set out there.
Oh, yeah. They're going to try and avoid everything. And that's not a very fun way to play, because the adventure's over there. Why aren't you taking it?
Why is it that someone would create a character that's like that, though?
Most new players do. Most new players try to make like one of like 3 types of characters. Either they create the perfect character who is, I am a hero and I am going to go do heroic things and I have a big sword and a big shield and I'm going to be like, haha, citizen, that type of first archetype.
Like there's no mystery behind him.
Yeah, or they create this very neutral character where they're like, I really don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to talk at all and I just want to kind of be behind other players and just kind of be there because I'm there. And they just don't understand yet. As a new player, they just don't understand how to interact with things. And then there's usually the latter half character, which is kind of that character who is there and they just make decisions based on how the game is. So if they say like, oh, there's a bandit over here, well, let's go kill the bandits. Do you want to care why? Not really.
Yeah. I just want to do something right now.
They're bandits, so let's go kill them. And that's typically the 3 newest players, like new player characters that you get. Most people end up in that kind of middle column where they just don't know what to do. They don't know how to evoke. And a lot of that is just pairing them with characters and players that do and are encouraging. A good way to do that is to kind of have, when you introduce a new player to the game, you have them come in, you help them write out their character.
Build them some influence, some clout with the party.
Mm-hmm. You help them build that character, and then you have that character attach themselves to another more veteran player who knows what they're doing. Especially someone that is a good player and will kind of encourage them to do things. And then you make sure that veteran player knows to encourage them to do things. You can't just assume they'll do it. And for the most part, that works out very well because you get that new player that comes in, and then the veteran player says, "What do you think, John?" And then the new player, who's John in this scenario, kind of looks back and is like, what if this is the answer? And he goes, I hadn't thought of that, and like he is kind of overreacting himself as a character. And so he allows the new player to kind of get into character for the first time and not feel awkward about joining the game.
Nice. That's super nice. Have you ever had the experience of a player that like gains so much influence that they almost have more influence on the NPCs around them than you do? Like maybe they get to the point not to where they're royalty, but their clout is just they're just like the Kim Kardashian of, you know, this little town, and like if Kim Kardashian says look left, everybody looks left, you know, attack these guards, and then like she almost controls, or this character rather almost controls the...
It is not impossible, but if that is what ends up happening in your game, your player has stayed in one place for too long.
Oh, okay.
The
NPCs are getting brainwashed.
They need to go on an adventure, is what they're doing. Is they've made their own adventure out of kind of controlling the town. Is what, if that has happened, then they've turned their focus to the town rather than the adventure, and you want to make sure that player eventually turns back towards the adventure.
You walk into the tavern and everyone's talking about the Instagram pics that just went up. Like, did you hear what they did in the marketplace? Oh my god!
I hear the statue's going to get replaced with his face.
Have you ever had a player statue created?
Yep.
Oh, really? Like a monument after a quest or money?
After
like
an adventure, a player character had gone through this entire adventure with the party, and they had saved this village twice, once from a dragon and then once from like a band of orcs, in 2 different scenarios.
Oh, hell yeah.
And they actually died fighting the dragon. And since they died fighting the dragon, they immortalized him.
It was posthumously or it was put up after their death. Oh man, how sad.
Yeah, well, it's a good way for that character to die. He was a dragon slayer, and he was looking for like a redemption story. So he redeemed himself. You know,
nice.
By sacrificing himself to save the town. But that was the way that he redeemed himself. He became the town hero, you know, like they put up a statue of him in the middle of the market square, and like that character and that player were like, they enjoyed that.
Damn,
like,
that is, yeah. Well, yeah, thumbs up. You got a statue. That's super cool, man. So kind of going in a different direction here. We talked a lot about D&D. We only brushed on the fact that you were streaming your D&D on Twitch,
yeah,
which is a point of interest of mine, because I mean, I think a lot about Twitch, and I think a lot about streaming, and you know, just broadcasting in general. I think a lot about what's been your experience on Twitch so far streaming D&D, because it's typically not one of the top viewed categories. It's typically something that, you know, has to, I guess, have a little bit more production value. It's one of those things that you can't just flip a webcam on and play a game, you know, like you're putting all this time into the world that you're doing, and now you've got to sell the production on one of the few broadcasting sites that are out there for this.
Yeah.
So like how long have you been on Twitch streaming this campaign?
We started January 1st, 2019.
Okay.
So we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of that. So
yeah.
Hooray for that. But the first several episodes went terribly. Because
they all do for any stream.
We didn't know how to record things correctly, and we didn't know how to, like, how did our sound, like, how did it all sound? How did it all look? Mm-hmm. We didn't have any art. We kind of barely had an overlay. Like the players that I had at the time were not the players that I have now. Like I lost pretty much all of the players. We kind of rotated through.
Questvault's had some generations in the last year.
We have. We went from having 13 or so volunteers for joining the game. Mm-hmm. We went down to 2 players who actually showed up that first week. And then over the course of the next couple weeks, we added 2 new players, Drew and Casey, who kept on. We lost one of the 2 originals just due to outside life things. And that left us with Cody, Casey, and Drew. And then Logan ended up joining us a little bit into our second or third month. Mm-hmm. And it's been that team kind of ever since. We did have a couple people kind of join and leave halfway through, but we didn't really start recording the live episodes until after that group left anyway. So those of you who go back to and watch the show, the Questvault show, on YouTube.
Twitch.tv/Questvault.
Yeah,
you got a YouTube too. All right,
we'll
plug
also
the YouTube.
Be uploading it on YouTube. Quest Vault.
Excellent.
And if you go back and watch episode 1, a reunion is the episode, and it's actually the reunion of the 4 other characters after like some time had been where they've been separated.
Okay.
And
well, you had to transition some of these ins and outs that these players were showing up and then they're leaving. So now you kind of got to patch things and make sure it makes sense in a holistic way. Well, I mean, yeah, every streamer is going to have a rocky start for sure to their channel. Like there's going to be you're going to question yourself mentally. Like, God, am I going to be prepared to put this through? We need to get this type of art done. We need to make sure that it has this. You want a standard of your production value. But I think it's interesting from me, my perspective, to look at you guys, because you're not just doing this as a one person. Like I can control everything on my channel. I'm a one-man operation. If no videos are getting put out, it's because it's me. If I don't go live, it's on me. So it's like, to be available and set all these schedules and stuff, that's like, hats off to you, man. That's a production value that get all these, it's hurting cats.
I would never have been able to do this without the rest of the guys.
That's awesome.
And I would never have been able to thank them enough for actually being there, because this has been a dream of mine for a while to run this game.
Yeah.
And then to have players who show up on time every day,
excited,
that it's supposed to, and they're excited to play.
You can get somebody who shows up every day, but if they don't want to be there, then it's a different game.
Yeah. And the fact that all of them care and they take notes and they ask me questions and they're like, "Ooh, I can't wait for the next episode." Like outside of the show, they'll come up to me and they'll just be like, "Ooh, was this guy supposed to be in it?" I'm like, spoilers. I'm not allowed to tell you."
That probably makes you feel so good when they're like, "Oh, I cannot wait for the next one."
Yeah. Whenever a player asks me about the game outside of us playing, it makes me know that it lets me know that they're thinking about it and that they enjoyed it enough to be thinking about it outside of the game.
But it doesn't make you go soft. You pitch them some meatball dungeon where it's like there's just a hallway and a treasure chest at the end, no traps, and it's got everything they need, and then they get in and get out. That was easy.
Hey, if you do that in a game, your players will find a way to make that hallway dangerous.
Oh, really? What do you mean?
They will go into that hallway and they'll be like, "This is a very conspicuous hallway. This is a trap in some way," and they're going to take inch by inch down that hallway looking for traps. And we're like, "Nope, there's no traps. Nope." And they're like, "I'll check now. Is there any? Can I press on the wall?
Yeah.
But is there a button like one
Should
of the stones?
I make a rudimentary lathe?"
Yes. It's like, do I need to tunnel over there? Like what's going on? I'm gonna throw a rock down the hallway and then like duck. And it's like, no, nothing happens. The rock clatters over there. Okay, and they finally get to the other side of the tunnel or whatever, and they get to the treasure chest, and they'll be like, "Wait. It's either booby trapped or it's a mimic," and you're like, "It's just a treasure chest, guys."
Well, I stab it with a spear,
and then you stab it. You hear like a shattering sound on the inside as you break the vase that you came here to protect.
Oh no!
And they're like, "No!"
Well, something's not right. I'm gonna throw a smoke bomb, see if there's any airways that we need to get. I was like, "Oh my god! Now you can't see shit."
Exactly. And now you have no idea.
Yeah.
And like someone else throws something down and it makes a clicking sound, and they're like, "What was that clicking sound? Was that the trap triggering?" No, it was just the rock you threw.
That's awesome.
It happens all the time.
Well, it sounds like you got an awesome team. And I know that you have spoken to me before about putting together some other content pieces for the channel. How's that stuff going? Are you doing FFA or Final Fantasy, rather? Or are you doing... Because I know you did Warhammer for a minute.
We did do Warhammer. We have a few Warhammer 2 Total War recordings kind of made and edited. And we also have done Divinity 2, Original Sin, and then we've also got things like Moon Hunters coming, as well as a bunch of older kind of NES or NES classics that we've like begun to think about recording, kind of get those like in the works and set up. And most of those are me and Logan kind of recording those. We also have kind of a how-to tutorial kind of set up how to play certain classes or how to stay relevant at the table, kind of conversations that
how to stay relevant at the table. I need to watch that just for dinner purposes.
Yeah, there you go.
I kind of zone out every time politics are brought up. So.
Yeah, how to stay relevant at the table. 1, don't zone out.
2, always ask to pass the salt, even if you don't need it. Okay, maybe not that type of table.
Maybe.
I digress.
And I believe that's being headed up by Casey and Drew right now.
Excellent.
They're doing it. I know that Logan and Cody are going to be recording their own episodes different games and things that they play.
Yes, do those weekly. Do those like every off weekly type things.
That's the plan.
I did so super random, but I saw on Twitter the Game Awards is going around. Like it's voting. Voting's open right now. You know, all the nominees are set after like a filtration process. I think it's like community votes. Then it goes to a panel of judges. And then the panel of judges passes through a list of nominees for different things. You know, Game of the Year, Best Story, Best Acting Performance, whatever. And I only voted on one. And that was because it was an actress that's in Critical Role. She played a character in Gears of War 5.
Gosh,
Laura Bailey.
Laura Bailey, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm just going to vote for Laura Bailey. I don't even care. I've never played Gears 5, but I'm going to vote for her. I know what type of, I feel a connection because she has showed up. Her husband, Travis, does, on Tuesdays, they do a Yeehaw Ranch. And it's on their Critical Role page. It's just another content piece, but through that other content piece, not the campaign itself, I've got to know these people, these actors as people, not just their characters, not just how they play D&D, but just who they are. And so even though I'm like never played Gears 5, I know there's a huge Gears community that's probably like pitchfork and torches right now. Never played it, I'm sorry, but I had to vote for it because Laura Bailey was up for nomination. So I'm like, hell yeah. I was like, I think I need to get Lumtheo in on some more content pieces. So I was glad to hear that you're getting some stuff going with the channel.
I appreciate you having me because I love being out there. I like having these kind of conversations.
Oh yeah, it's easy.
It's very much something that I can just continue to talk.
Oh, for sure, dude. There's, everyone has their topic. Everyone has their like, hold up, what'd you just say? All right, I got to clear my afternoon. For better or worse. For better or worse, everyone has their thing. So very that's true. Really cool that you were able to come here and share that. But, I did want to ask you about if you've looked to see how the channel could possibly do on like Mixer or all these other like broadcasts that have come up. You said you got stuff going on YouTube. YouTube launched like YouTube Gaming, and they're bringing over streamers from Twitch to just exclusively. Have you heard about this stuff with Mixer? What's your take on the Twitch versus Mixer thing that's going on?
Right now we're taking a kind of wait and see approach, mostly because they're changing their terms and conditions.
Who?
Twitch, YouTube, and Mixer have been messing with their terms and conditions, and one of the things we want to make sure that we do is we are very careful about like if we pick a platform, we want to make sure that our audience can find us on that platform, and then it's easy enough to use, and it, like the interface is well tested, and so that we don't have technical difficulties on top of our own problems to run the show.
You want it to be a reliable platform.
Yeah, and one of the terms and conditions that they've recently kind of changed and we've looked into is the exclusivity clause. Is if you are an associate or an affiliate with one or one of these streaming sites, they don't want you to be an affiliate of another.
Yeah, sure.
And
that
so
makes sense. They're competitors.
They're competitors, so they don't want you to be on those other sites, so you can lose your affiliate status if they find you on another platform.
That's like, I'm going to do Twitch in the morning and Mixer in the afternoon.
Exactly.
Double dip. From my perspective, like obviously the way that we stream and the way that we're kind of like, brothers in the whole streaming service world is a lot different because we do different things. But from my perspective, it makes sense to kind of stay on Twitch, and I love that Mixer is on the field because it's going to bring up competition, right? They're going to be rolling out the red carpet for guys like us, teams like us, I should say, and that only is going to make us easier for discoverability, right? People to be able to find us, like you said, it's one of the important things, but also eagerness for them to capture us. If we do one or two things right, we might get a little bit more recognition for that now because they don't want us to get swooped up and get recognized by the other guy.
Competition is good for everyone.
Oh hell yeah. With Twitch, I think for gaming in particular, there's a higher ceiling, and I don't know what the D&D scene is on Mixer, but I think on Twitch as well, D&D has such a higher ceiling. You might get discovered maybe a lot quicker on Mixer, but your opportunity to get bigger partnerships, your opportunity to up your production value is the level you'll be able to reach would be way higher on something like Twitch. They're much more established. They have TwitchCon once a year. MixerCon might be coming this next year, 2020. We don't know, but the reality is like the foundation is so much stronger with Twitch. I was like, I wonder if Lumtheo, because I had a thought when Shroud and Ninja went over to Mixer. I thought, okay, more people are going to start getting over for sure. Mixer announced that they were lowering their sub cost to where it was going to be $1 lower than Twitch. I'm like, wow, that's a big deal. That's $1 a month people could save to watch the same thing. This might be something to invest in. And then I thought, man, the partnerships are just way too. There's so much more breadth and so much more depth to Twitch. And Mixer might get there one day. Who knows? 6 months from now, a year from now, Mixer might be at that level to where they can offer kind of the same thing. But I feel like longevity-wise, Twitch is going to be a little bit. It's going to be around. It's tested. Platform. It's time tested. Yeah, it's more established for sure. And YouTube is like the exposure for any one video or any one theme that you do. Like, let's say you have a playlist of D&D stuff, and then a playlist of like how-tos, and then a playlist of it. Your discoverability is going to be way higher for YouTube, but your market is so broad that it's going to hit a lot less in terms of like your ability to use it to financially prop up your business or like find partnerships.
Utilize that community that you build.
Oh, hell yeah. And I mean, YouTube becomes it becomes so much more locked down. I do have questions about the way Twitch runs their moderation team sometimes, but the reality is they're just so much more established and so much more willing to put forward the effort for channels like D&D. It's like...
Yeah, you spoke a little bit about Critical Role already, but like the fact that they are so big is what draws a lot of people to Twitch. And
on Thursdays they're like the number one gaming category,
and they will be.
Oh yeah,
they will be for a very long time. And they draw on so many people to the D&D category, but they only play once a week, right?
Yeah,
and so those people who want a quality game, they want to kind of watch another game, they're going to come back on another time of the week, and that's what we want to provide. We want to provide that other quality game. We want to provide the other story that they can kind of get invested in. And like we're taking the idea of, okay, we can also present a good storyline. We also can present good characters.
Hell yeah.
Time and enjoy ourselves while we play, and then hopefully like interact with the audience enough that the audience enjoys themselves as well.
Yeah, you do Q&As after every episode.
Every episode.
Yeah.
We love talking to the audience because the audience is the best part. As soon as the game is over, we can be like, so what'd you think? And then they can look at us and be like, that was great, or like that was hilarious. And those are my favorite moments.
That's awesome.
Like the audience comes in and they tell us what their favorite moments are.
Do you spend any time? I know we kind of talked about this before off mic, but I know you said that you tend not to spend too much time on Critical Role, but have you ever spent time on other D&D channels where maybe you turn into like because I feel like your narration level is S tier. I mean, just from, I'm saying this as like a brother, but I feel like your narration is S tier. So from an outsider, I would also feel like your criticism would be S tier. So, like the critic on Ratatouille where he's like, he loves food, but he's so critical of the food he eats that he's skinny.
I know what you mean.
Do you take time to digest other narrator stories, or how do you digest other narrator stories? Is it something where you kind of like do a hands off, or do you like, I can make this way better? Maybe not a D&D perspective. Let's not call any communities out. But like when you watch movies or read books or watch TV shows, are you like, boo,
yes,
garbage
all the time? All the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are a few more recent examples that I won't call out specifically here, but there are some more recent examples that I have watched and I've begun to like. I've enjoyed the show. Like say I'm watching the show and I've rather enjoyed it, and as time goes on, and then I see a point in it where I'm just like, why did you decide to go this direction? Like the way that you were heading originally was way like vastly superior. Like yes, it was a little bit more like the path, like most
so they
common
took like
travel.
an unnecessary tangent, or they took an unnecessary turn.
Yes, they took an unnecessary turn, and then I start seeing this kind of downward spiral of like bad decisions being made. And a lot of the times I find that those bad decisions being made, not in a D&D context, I mean like in these kind of shows, like TV shows and such, are made out of a money like mindset. introducing random characters so they can sell a thing that's associated with that character, or introducing a character so that the audience can like that character and then axing them, but that character never accomplished anything, so their death is meaningless. That character's death is completely meaningless in the grand scheme of the story. They were there to pluck on the audience's heartstrings rather than to actually add something to the narrative or add something to the overarching
It almost
plot.
sounds like there's like a theme of ego stroking where it's like I can provide and I can take away. And you're just like, why? Yeah. Because you can find other ways to provide and other ways to take away.
Being a game master myself, like I said before, you want to provide your players, you want to provide your audience with
value,
a good time. Your job is to be the entertainer. You are the person that is entertaining them. You are providing with them the adventure and the story and like the plot twists and like good characters and character death. You know, that's you're doing that. Mm-hmm. But when you add something with no value to the players other than just like, for lack of a better word, to mess with them, like you've literally added this character strictly just to mess with them. It adds no other value other than the fact that you wanted to mess with your players or you wanted to mess with your audience.
Oh yeah, they're totally. They just want to show that the players are going to comply to their will. Like It's the God complex.
Exactly. And I've seen shows that do that, and like I've watched other like D&D casts as well, like on Twitch, as well as kind of bigger ones. I've watched YouTube videos, things like that. I'm a little bit more critical of those ones. But I try to take them in stride, because I know that not every GM is the same, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. In the example of Critical Role, typically what I'll end up doing is if I do end up watching anything of the Critical Role show, typically what I'll do is I'll watch it from a audience perspective, like I'll just kind of let it happen and enjoy it. And if there was a particular part that I found particularly interesting, I might go back and kind of very, very carefully watch how Matt presents it, how he presents the game, and then kind of take notes. And there are some times where he makes things that I'm just like, why would you present it that way? And I don't understand. Or I might be like, oh, that's genius that he presented it this way. And that can only make me better, is by seeing the fault or seeing the positive and learning from both sides.
As long as you give yourself that like ego check as well, to where you don't mesh your visions, because I feel like it was a lot of stress. Maybe not stress, but it was a lot of personal intrigue of mine when I started streaming to kind of stay away from watching too many other streamers. Yep. Because I didn't want to become them. You know, it's the same thing with comedians. It's like there's a point to where you evolve to become the comedian you are, but throughout the stages of that evolution, you're kind of embodying and impersonating these other comedians that you watch and you enjoy and you want to kind of mimic with, you know, their style type of thing. So it's like you don't want to get caught up in that. So I was very fearful of that. So it's like as soon as I started dipping my toes in just watching other streams to see like what I enjoyed rather than what they were succeeding at, then I was able to be like, okay, well, how can I find a way to enjoy this from my own stream, as opposed to watching it and being like, okay, how can I take that and make it my own? You know?
Yeah, no.
There's two different perspectives.
You never want to repurpose anything. You never want to take another idea from another game and then just kind of repurpose it into yours. That's not how you do that. What you do is you look at it from like an objective standpoint and say, how did this become an impactful moment? Mm-hmm. If say there's a big reveal and all the players are like, whoa, that was amazing, like I never had that idea, that's the character was the bad guy the entire time. You don't look at like, oh, how can I make that happen? You look back and say, why was this reveal so impactful? How did he accomplish that? And then you look back and you say like, oh, like he mentioned this character here in passing. They weren't even relevant, you know, like, oh, they read that he was mentioned here by this guy. Oh, I see the thread there. Like, oh, what about this guy? Oh, and you kind of see the line that was kind of made kind of haphazardly over time. And then you can definitely start seeing like how that thread slowly weaved together into the plot as it was slowly added. And then you say, okay, like I understand that is like why that scene is very impactful. Like I understand why that reveal now was very impactful. It's because they've been hearing about it this entire time. So how can I, in the context of my events, where I know that I want this particular NPC, this guy to be, he's the secret villain, like I've made him the secret villain from the very beginning. How do I make it so that the players get the hints, but also don't get it revealed too early, you know? Like how can I
That's got to be a tough job. Some people probably catch hooks way easier than others.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like we were talking about the appreciating the story thing earlier. I was playing the Call of Duty Modern Warfare campaign, and from literally the first like 10 minutes, I figured out, I mean, spoilers, turn this off if you haven't played the campaign yet, but I fided out who was going to be the bad guy. Like immediately. I was like, dude, that guy's got it was a game, like a video game. These aren't human actors, you know, he didn't portray the emotion enough to where it fooled me. He had like one line and he said something and then and he did all this good stuff. But it was just that one line where I was like, this motherfucker's going to turn on us.
He's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, and then about 45 minutes, maybe an hour later or whatever, he does something again that's a little sketchy and I'm like, oh, he is definitely turning. That's like that's supposed to be the first breadcrumb. But like, I feel like maybe I was able to steal a free one earlier on just because I had caught that hook easier.
Yeah, you start to notice that when you start looking at your own plots. Like I definitely see those now way too easy.
Yeah.
Like I can definitely tell when someone's supposed to be the villain later on because usually the artist tries to put in a very early like, hey, they did something bad in the past, you know, or oh, they're doing something kind of sketchy. Oh, but it's a good idea. Okay. You know?
Yeah.
But they were being sketchy.
They're kind of hard.
Yeah. Or they give them like a little bit of a hint very early on. And sometimes the player catch it and sometimes they don't. And sometimes the players are completely oblivious.
I think that's what can get a good viewer to attach to a TV show. If they just catch wind, it's the theory crafting. I feel like it empowers the viewer. That's got to be one of the strongest reasons I loved Game of Thrones. And my after the show ended and credits were going, my mind immediately started racing and theory crafting. Okay, this is kind of the breadcrumbs. These I laid out all on the table. These are the breadcrumbs. We got this. Here's how I think they're all gonna, weave together and paint the picture that is gonna be the end eventually. But that was part of the fun for me in a lot of shows that I watch is just being able to theory craft. So
that's a lot of what my players try to talk to me about outside of the game.
Oh, of course.
They come to me and they go,
they're like, what is
by the
this?
way, was this guy the villain the entire time? And I'm like, I'm not telling you that.
Have you ever gotten bribed?
They've tried.
They're like, hey, they show up on like a random Sunday and they're like,
hey, have some brownies.
I got some free Panda Express and a large Coke. I know that you like the Kung Pao and the sweet fried chicken. You typically do half and half for your side, don't you? Oh, you do. How did I know that?
I know that, yeah.
Hey, by the way.
Would it be a stretch to say that the guy, what was his name? The one that seemed kind of evil. And I'm just
nothing?
No, sorry, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh yeah,
shoots a glance.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, just you don't have to tell me. Just blink once if this person is gonna betray us.
And that's when I look at them like this, and then blink like 6 times, like. And then they go, ooh, does that mean that they will betray us 6 times?
Or does that mean that,
or does that mean that they're actually the good guy and you just want me to think
the blinks cancel out, so I think he did it 6. That's yes, no, yes, no.
Exactly.
And then it's like you've got your players playing a campaign outside of the party in real world because they're trying to get information from you, and then you send them on quests. You're like, go get Panda Express for me.
If only that's how that works.
I was going to say, you couldn't really control the messenger boy at that point.
No.
Hey, kid, I got $20. Go roll in front of him and say you've got important news. Maybe that's the next thing. What do you think? D&D in real life. We create a campaign.
That's called LARPing. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Live action role play.
Good luck. It's not something that I've been super interested in myself, but who knows?
Well, are you into like VR and stuff? Eventually, they're going to make some sort of huge like VR world where it's fantasy and you can create a character and Skyrim essentially, but you're doing it VR. Ready Player One. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would be down to give it a shot, obviously.
Oh, hell yeah. And it's like you're on a gyro thing like Ready Player One too, where you're like running. Maybe there's physical
like moves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely be down with that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sick.
100% be down with that.
The I don't know if you got an ear to the ground in like the gaming world or gaming community, but one of the guys that did Quake and he created id Software and he worked with Oculus Rift for years, John Carmack, he was on a podcast I was listening to, and he was talking about VR like it was gonna cure everything. It was gonna like cure the world. This guy, he was deep. Okay, don't get me wrong. Like I'm fascinated with brilliant minds like his, like getting really excited about stuff. But he was going so deep where he was like, Matrix when, like please sign me up type of thing. Dang. Well, anyways, so just recently, the whole story of this is just recently he left id Software or Oculus rather to do artificial intelligence with like this renowned artificial AI company, and I'm like, Skynet. This guy's gonna make it happen, man. He seriously thinks like if Ready Player One were a scenario, we would all be thankful type of thing. I'm like, oh my god, dude.
Skynet coming.
You never know, man.
Hey, man, Person of Interest. You ever watch that show? If you haven't done it, please do. It's great.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Is it like a Big Brother type of thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Person
really?
of Interest. It's got like AI. It's like it's good.
That's another something that's fascinated. You've always fascinated me about was you just recently got a smartphone.
Yeah.
So you haven't, even though you're kind of in this like tech savvy world, you're not staying up at the cusp. You're not getting in line for that iPhone 11.
I don't need it.
Yeah. It's good to have a disconnect.
Personally, I would say everything in moderation.
Yeah. Tenfold.
If you can limit your exposure to a little bit more of the, I would consider it a little bit harmful, as I very heavily value like face-to-face communication, much like this. Like I rather enjoy this conversation.
Oh yeah. Me too. Thank you.
Having conversations at a table where 3 people are on their phone and I'm the only one not on my phone really makes me remind myself that I'm not going to pull my phone out right now.
Yeah.
Like, don't look at your phone.
There's value in not always checking the screen, and it can catch you to slippery slope for sure.
Yeah. So I very purposefully do not have games on my phone. I very purposefully don't have anything other than email, messages, and then like the Discord because I need it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think it's going to the world of cyborg? I mean, we already carry phones in our pockets, right? Wasn't that an Elon Musk quote?
Hey, man.
We're already cyborgs. Everybody has a phone in their pocket, and they require
implants are coming.
It helps them do things. Yeah, who is the theoretical physicist guy that thinks we're gonna do like contact Michio Kaku?
Michio Kaku.
Yeah. The contact lenses.
Very fascinating. Warp drive and like implants. Like plasma, like fascinating stuff.
Oh, hell yeah.
Physics, man. That's what it's about.
Well, in Minority Report, it really caught me, and I really believe it, when he was walking into a mall or whatever, and they scanned his eye, and then all of a sudden these ads started popping up that were engineered to him. I'm like, dude, that already happens. I mean, obviously in Minority Report's an older movie, but it's that science fiction is the story of the future, like you said.
Exactly how things work.
Oh, sad but true. Yeah. Did you notice how when you said everything in moderation, and I said, oh yeah, tenfold. I just realized, okay, maybe it's not the turn I want, but anyways, thank you, man, for being here. I think I'm going to wrap up the podcast here. I got some things to do before I'm heading out of town, but dude, thank you, man. Pilot episode. For everybody out there, this is Lumtheo at QuestVault. Lumtheo, where can people find you?
That's twitch.tv/QuestVault or the YouTube channel. We will have that going relatively soon after this podcast probably is released.
Excellent. Yeah.
You can find that on
December 1st.
Yeah, you can find that at YouTube at QuestVault there as well.
Excellent. Well, this is not going to be your last time on the podcast. We'll have you back, dude, for sure.
Of course.